Welcome to our first module for AutoCAD. Our first module will be mainly talking about certain toolbars and palettes that you will typically use throughout your career. I won't go into advanced options, but I will talk about the basics that you'll typically look at and typically will use as you begin your craft as a drafter. The first part of our module will be about how to open a file, and I will show you two ways to do that. So let's begin. The first part here is how to open. Now there's two ways, as I mentioned. The first way is using the paper icon, which you'll see on your top left corner. You can click on that, or the other that's the easiest way. The other option is clicking on the A and clicking on New if you decide to go this option. Now as you see, there is a new window popped up called Select Template. Though there are many options there, many files there, the file that you should be interested in, or the file that we're going to be using, and you'll typically use depending on the situation, but majority of the time you'll click on ACAD. Now you can double click it or click the file and then click open. So you see now that you have a model space, which is where you'll typically draw all your drawings on your model space. You'll also see on my AutoCAD, you'll see the properties palette on your far left corner. Now the majority of the toolbars, as you'll see here, these are the toolbars and these are the palettes. You'll see that you can move them and drag them wherever you like. As you'll see always on the left, there'll be this little handle here, and as you can see, I'm moving the toolbar. Over here, you can see here, I'm moving the palette as well. Typically, they will typically dock here on the top, or if you want them in the bottom, they'll dock, as you can see here, or they'll dock over here on the far right. So you do have multiple options in regards to where you want to locate your toolbars and your palettes to make it more functionable for you to work on. So the first palette that we'll be talking about is the properties palette. Properties palette is really a very useful tool in regards to fine-tuning your lines, your objects that you draw on your model space. I will briefly talk about this, and again, as I mentioned, I won't go into too much detail or advanced options, but I will just talk about the general properties, the general section that I want you to focus on right at this point in time. So we are mainly just talking about the general subsection of properties, which is the general, as you can see above you. The first part, the majority of the first three sections, the color, layer, and line type, are mainly your layers. So as you continue, which we'll talk about it later on in this module, as you add new layers, these new layers will also be shown on your general subsection for properties. In this case here, your first part is your color. The color typically will be the general colors that you will see: the red, yellow, green, cyan, and blue, and magenta, and white. But as you add different layers, as you add new layers, you can also associate those layers for those colors to that layer, and it will also be reflected here in your properties window. Here is your layers. In this case, since we have no layers at all, which I will show you how to add one layer, which you'll typically do the typical process that I will mention to you for the layers, you'll do for the additional layers that you're adding to your project. So in this case, we have no layers at this point in time. We just have the 0 layers. So this is the 0 layer. And just to mention, the 0 layer will always be a default layer that you cannot delete. So just to be clear there, the layer is a useful layer, but it's also a default layer. In every project that you open in AutoCAD, you will also see that. Your next one is your line type. Depending on your line type, you may have hidden lines, which you've probably seen in some of the projects. If you worked with an architect, or if you've seen architectural projects before, you will see either a continuous line, which is a straight line, without any cuts or dashes or at all, or you'll have a hidden line. This is where you can fine tune in regards to, when I mean fine tune, I mean also override. You can override a layer. As you create a new layer, as we'll mention, I'll show you what I mean by override. So these are the areas that you will also look at as you're drawing a particular line or a circle or a rectangle. This is where you can override your layers. Now, overriding layers can be helpful, but can also be a problem as well as you're getting more in depth in your projects, because layers are as important as any other program out there, like Photoshop or Illustrator. Anything dealing with graphic designs, layers are one of the most fundamental components to your project in order to make it more feasible and functionable for you to work with, especially when you have multiple layers that you're using in your project. So properties is a very useful tool, and I'll show you a little bit in regards to how advanced this can be. Let me draw you a line really quick. And as I selected the layer, you can see that it's been selected. It has 3 nodes, which is typical for any object or anything that you do in AutoCAD. As you see down below here under the geometry subsection, you'll see the location, the coordinates of the line where it is set in the whole model space. And then you also have down below no angles, but you also have the length. The length is also shown as well. That's how long this line is. So when you deselect it, you can see it goes back to normal, and you can delete it. So how to get here, there's 2 ways. You got to go, mainly the first thing you got to go to is the tool menu, tool menu, and then you go down here to your palettes. And as you can see, there's properties, there's layers, there's tool palettes, there's other areas here that we won't go into. But properties here, this is how you can get to it. You got 2 options. You can either do Control 1, or you can go click on properties and it'll open it up. And I'll show you how to close it and how to open it up again. But that's where you will go to the tools menu on the toolbar and go down to palettes and go to properties, and you have 2 options there, Control 1 or properties. So let's close this properties window. As you can see on your right corner of properties, you'll see an X. You click on X. Now to get back to it, as I mentioned, there's 2 options, Control 1 or go to the tool menu and go to properties, and there you go as well. So those are 2 ways to get there, to open it up and how to close it. Now let's go down to your model and paper space. Model and paper space are really key components to your drawing. Now model space, as I mentioned as we began this module, this is your workspace. This is your drawing board, if you will, and this is where you will draw everything, always on your model space. You click on the next one, your layout. You'll see many times in architectural drawings a title block, and within your title block you have the architectural company or the drafter who drew it or anything like that, or your revision notes, the sheet number. Many times in a lot of architectural plans you'll see the elevations, sections, details, floor plan, foundation plan, electrical plan, HVAC plan with each tab. Each tab will have a specific drawing in regards to the page number. In the first page, usually the cover sheet, and that will have all the pages with the page numbers, and that is associated with every page. So elevation could be 3.1. On your tab here, we'll say elevation 3.1. Now, as I mentioned, elevation 3.1 or cover sheets, this means that you can also rename these tabs. So here, if you right click, just as in any other word processing program that you have out there, here is the option to rename. Now, if you have 2 tabs, you can delete 1 tab out of the 2, but you will always have 1 model space tab and 1 paper space tab. So the paper space tab is, as I just mentioned, the name paper space. Paper, each sheet is just like every layer. So layer 1, you can rename it and you can put cover sheet. That is your sheet. And as you're creating your title block has to be created on your layout page or your paper space page, not your model space page. And I will briefly show you, as you go to model space tab, you have to deselect the option that you were on, which I just did with clicking escape. If you click on model space, we'll do a rectangle, just any type of rectangle here. So there's your rectangle. If we go to paper space, here is your rectangle. Now, how to get into this rectangle that's on the paper space is your plot plan. And so you can either hide it, which I won't get into, but in this space, in this rectangle, this large rectangle you have, in order to move or zoom to see more of this rectangle that we just drew on model space, you got to click inside the paper space. So just double click, and now you are on the model space page within the paper space, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to pan, and as you can see, now we're able to move. But if you didn't do that, if we go back here, now we are back on our paper space. Now if I try to pan, it moves the whole paper space. So in order to get to the rectangle that you just drew on model space, you got to double click on inside the paper space, and now you can zoom, you can pan, and you can also zoom in. Now a lot of times it's very tricky when you do this, especially when you're doing architectural plans, because a slight movement of zooming in, which is using your scroll on your mouse, going forward and going back, can zoom the object or the floor plan or whatever you're drawing, can mess up the scale. And scale is something that I won't touch in today, but that's important as well as you're drawing plans. So this is it can be very delicate, and so you just have to be very careful when you're doing that. So to get out of this model space within paper space, you got to type in PS, but you have to deselect the command that you had on right now, which is the pan tool. So just by clicking escape, type in PS, and now you're back to the paper space. And you'll know this as you pan, which is using the hand model here, the hand icon, you can move the paper space. So that's another area here that you can use, that's important. Well, not use, but you will use during your career. Model space and paper space. The next part here we're going to talk about is your control. Now control is not shown right now because I had deleted it, but to get to there, go to tools and you go command line. So there's your command line. The command line is another important element to your drawings. Let me stretch it out here. Command line will basically show you all the commands that you've just typed in. As you can see here, I typed in PS previously for the paper space. We've typed in pan, P for pan. It also shows here that I had pressed escape. So this gives you a history of what you've done from the very beginning as you open up this project or this file. So this is how important this is. So if you ever get lost in regards to you clicked on a command accidentally and it's changed something in your project, you can go back here and look at what you've done, and you can either type in the command, and if it has an on and off setting, you can turn it off or turn it on. So this is how useful it is. Now, if you get to the point here where you accidentally delete this, it'll give you a prompt here. To display the command line again, press Control 9. So these are two ways. You can do Control 9, which is your shortcut key, or you can go down to the tool menu, and go to command line. And there's another way to open up command. So that's why it's important to use command line. The next toolbar, the next part that I'll be mentioning, is now the layers. Layers are very, very, very important. As I mentioned, it's just like Photoshop, and as you get more and more in depth into your project, layers are very, very important. So as I mentioned, 0 is a default layer, and as you can see, there's many subsections to this. There's on, there's freeze, there's lock, and there's color, and there's line type, line weight, and so on and so forth. But we'll mainly just focus on the first 3 or 4. We'll mainly focus on, freeze, lock, color, inline type, inline weight. So there's 5 that we'll talk about briefly. So to create a new layer, you have to go over here, as I'll highlight here. It says and new layer, or Alt N is a shortcut key. So we'll do this and say we want to type in, you can type in whatever you like, floor plan. So we'll type in floor plan, then click out of it. Now you have a new layer. You'll also have an on and off layer. So this means that if you draw something, which I'll show you, you go here to your model space and we're going to draw a rectangle again. As you can see here on your command, you'll see that I typed in REC, short for rectangle, and now you have a rectangle. Now you can see also in your properties, you also have all the information in regards to this object and where it's located on the model space. And at the same time, since this object was drawn on the 0 layer, because you can see here, this is the status, and here you can see that it's been check marked. So this is the current active layer. So basically anything that you draw in this model space will be on the 0 layer, but we don't want it that way. So what we need to do is go here, double click. Now you have the floor plan as the active layer. Now since we have this new layer, we need to add color. So for the color, we want this layer to be blue. We want this. Now here, as you select line type, as you can see, there's only one line type. Now to add new line types, you come in here, you click on load. As I go back here, you click on the load button. You'll see many layers here, line type layers. So we're going to go up here to the file, and there's an open window box to search, and type in hidden. Okay, so there's hidden. Okay, it's not working that way. So what we can do here is scroll down, and we'll go here all the way to hidden, and then click on hidden, and there you go. It's shown there, and we're going to click OK. So now if you click here, you got 2. So we want this to be hidden. Boom, hidden. Okay, here at line type, you can typically use this. It goes all the way down from 0 millimeters all the way to 2.11 millimeters. You typically don't go as far as 2.11. You may go up to 0.35 all the way to 0 or default, which a lot of people typically do, as you saw in the first layer, 0 layer. So we'll leave this at default. We'll click OK, and now you have that. So what we need to do here, since this wasn't drawn, there's 2 ways to get to fix this, to get it to the floor plan layer. What we talked about first was the properties. So now we know that properties is a fine-tune layer or an override layer. So if we go down to click on layer, you'll see here floor plan. As you click on floor plan, you'll automatically see that it's completely changed the 0 layer, which was white, to the floor plan layer or color, which was blue. By layer is the by layer, which is the layer, the color, the by layer is the color that you originally selected for that layer. So by changing it or overriding it, you can change it here, but it also overrides and messes up. So any other line that you draw after this will be green. Well, in this case, blue. But you can override each line. So here's a perfect example of how to get one option, how to change this, is to do that way. We're going to undo this. Now, we can also do here, we can delete it, delete this line. Now we have floor plan layer, and we can create a new one, a new rectangle, which we'll do. So here again, there's 2 ways to do it. You can override the layer in properties, or you can delete the object that you previously drawn and create a new drawing, a new rectangle, and select the layer as it select previously. As you select the layer previously and then draw it again, it will go correctly to the right layer and the color as such. So that's how important layers are. And you can also close this as well. And you can also drag the toolbar, which is the toolbar for layers, which typically will be on the top. But you can also find this here under palettes. And here you go. So under the tools menu, under palettes, layer is right there. And there's no shortcut key for that one. So you can do it 2 ways. So you can open it up that way, or there's a toolbar here, toolbars, AutoCAD, and here's your layers as well. So you can also select layers through there too. So if I close it, it's gone. If I want it back, I can go to the toolbars, AutoCAD, layers, and there you are. There's your other option. This is also a shortcut option. So as you create layers on your floor plan here, which is your layers here, as you create new layers here, it'll also show here as well. So now you got 2 layers here. So this is a toolbar used that you can use it as well as you're creating new layers on this window that I had previously shown you. As you're creating new layers, they'll also show here on your toolbar, which is a shortcut. So you don't waste too much time opening the window and selecting the layer. You can come over here and select it as well. So that's the option there. And so this ends the module for AutoCAD, the first module, Module 1. That we briefly touched on properties, we touched on the command, we touched on layers, and we also touched on the model and paper space. These are really the basics or the fundamentals of how to first override, how to create layers, and what the meaning of each part is. So these are the foundations. Module 2 will mainly be talking about the line tool and ways that we can use the line tool, and areas that you can look at to excuse me, to fine tune the information of where it's located. If you want to do angles, how to get angles from using lines and drawing anything that you would like. So I leave you with that. Hopefully this module 1 works really good for you guys. Hopefully it's very helpful as you continue on in your drafting career. And always shoot me a comment me or like the module. Again, if there's anything that is not clear, please comment below, and then I'll add more information or respond to you to helpfully help you clarify the information that's not clear for you. And as well as if you want more advanced tutoring, one-on-one tutoring, please message me on the Solterra Design Solution Facebook page, and I will get back to you and we'll schedule some time, and we'll talk a little bit more in regards to how to proceed to have the one-on-one training. So I wish you guys the best. God bless, and hopefully you guys are having a great day. Bye.